I love an RTS as much as the next guy, and Grit and Valor 1949 is the newest in terms of World War II in an alternate universe in the RTS genre. You command an elite squad of mechs in an ultimate World War II diesel punk real-time tactic roguelike. Think fast, battle the evil Axis forces and neutralize their HQ. Upgrade your mechs and pilots and develop new strategies to defeat your enemies. I've been playing around with this because really kindly, Milky Tea Studios, a fantastic name by the way, came to me and asked to sponsor a video. So thank you for them. If you guys like what you see, go and check it out in the link in the description. However, I load up into the game and we get an awesome cinematic. It has really nice art style to it. This dystopian world after when the Second World War actually ended, and to what came next. And this was more fighting, but now we don't have tanks and soldiers, we have mechs. Each level is pretty quick in succession, so you're probably doing between 2 and 3 minutes per mission, and we go through multiple campaigns, whether it's the British Isles, going into Europe, so on and so forth. And the levels obviously get trickier and trickier. We have a command vehicle, which is the thing we have to defend. Once that goes, you're dead, so make sure you're looking after that. Everything is pretty grid-based, which works kind of well in some ways, and in other ways I think I probably would rather it wasn't so much. For example, you left-click to click on a unit, you then left-click for them to move. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. However, it does get a little bit fiddly when you've got multiple units. You need to left-click for every command, and often I ended up moving guys to places that I didn't want to move them. That was probably one of the only criticisms that I actually have of the game. But in terms of the actual controls, everything else seems pretty smooth. It runs really well as well. We have these cool little dioramas of World War II, and I love how varied each one is. You've got your little zeppelins up in the sky to stop incoming bombers, which we'll get onto in a little bit. And of course, different bits of cover. You can put your mechs behind cover to give them a bit more protection. Not only that, but you can put them on top of high ground because just like Obi-Wan Kenobi, it will give you a great advantage. Now, all your mechs have different abilities, skills, and things that they can use. For starters, in the first few missions, I've got my machine gunner mech, who's pretty powerful all-rounder. He's good at taking out other mechs, other soldiers, so on and so forth, and has a decent range. My favorite is the flamer. Not even as close to having the range as my machine gun mech, but does a hell of a lot of damage once he sets loose. And like every game, flamers are just absolutely insane. I then have a bombard guy who fires, well, arcing mortar shells is probably the best way I can put it. But all of these don't just have their primary form of fire. The flamer can repair itself. Okay, kind of useful. You will need that because, as we'll get onto, the missions have checkpoints, but only one every 5 or 6 levels, which means that your mechs need to use the same amount of ammo, abilities, and health through every single go. So if you lose a lot of health within the first few missions, you're going to be really struggling by, well, the last one, as we'll get on to. So the mechs have other abilities. Not only can the flamer repair itself, the MG guy can have a little boost pack. He can jump around. It's cool if you want to get him into high areas, or even if you need to move him to one side of the map in fast succession, he can jump back to it. And of course, my mortar one can put down mines. Probably the most useful. You're able to block off entrances and exits, especially when there's little ramps and bridges within levels. Being able to put mines on them is infinitely more useful than anything else. And your commander truck can heal all the mechs around them. So you do have that ability, but they all have limited uses, and like I mentioned before, they carry on between missions. So don't use up all your heals in the first mission because you're going to need them later on, and you're really going to need them later on. It is pretty tricky. The earlier missions, you can kind of coast through fairly sensibly, but as we move on, it gets worse and worse and worse. Our first mission sees us with our mechs and a few camps. Now we have to defend our tents because they have our resources in them. Make sure that nobody can take them because, well, then we'll lose the game. Not only that, we've got to defend the commander who can't shoot, but he's just got to hide around. We've got a little bit of cover at the top, so as we move through, you can see me sort of dancing around the cover with the commander, and of course, putting my guys up onto the higher levels. There are a couple of choke points that I try and block off with mines, and that seems very, very useful, and all seems to be going well until the final wave where they come from the south side of the map and flame down one of my buildings. I am able to get down there and cover. However, as you'll see, especially with my MG mech, takes a lot of damage from their flamer mech. This was the first mission, and I wasn't entirely sure how much damage they would do, but yeah, he blasts me to pieces. Luckily, we're able to take him down, but it's a little bit of a tricky one. Then, before we go to the next level, we get to choose an enhancement. Okay, well, our explosive mechs can now have an increased fire weight. Or I can choose the one where they've got critical damage and a chance to execute the enemy. that sounds kind of cool. It's a 30% chance of it doing it, but if we can have a final last stand and a quick execution, I'll take it. This is on the British Isles, by the way, this first map. So we're heading down through Scotland. Like William Wallace, the next mission is more of a choke point battle. We start on a raised platform and the enemies come in from all sides. Now, this is probably one of the easier ones, since the only way enemies can get to you are up ramps. So I start placing down mines, and my god, it's very useful. Using the heal from my commander ship, we're able to get some health back, especially on that MG lad. And using my guys together in a synced formation means that I'm able to pile fire down onto any enemies, especially when we get to the points where multiple enemies come from multiple sides and the mechs start coming in. What I do find is that whilst there are cover on various portions of the map, so you can split up your troops, putting your mechs all together, almost surrounding your commander truck, is one of your best options, especially when it's not too many enemies, but they're coming from all separate directions. Not only are you able to compile your fire together to cause the most amount of havoc on the enemy, but also it takes away the enemy fire from looking and shooting at your commander ship, and instead they'll just shoot at your other lads. On to the next mission, we have a very similar raised platform. Once again, using mines well to my advantage. It was probably one of the best things I was able to do there. They're starting to send in some flamer troops now, and flamer troops can cause a lot of damage, so I've got to keep them at bay. Not just that, but mechs are coming in, but this round was pretty able to take them out. Now you can select different branches of which direction you want to go on your missions, but I go on to the final checkpoint mission for this area, and I probably went in a little bit too early. The fight begins, and we have these waterways, bridges over that we're able to checkpoint, and a lot of defensive structures to hold. I decide my best option is to keep on the raised platform and to keep my troops together because, well, what I don't realize is that there's now bomber planes. Incendiary bombs will come over. Of course, they will give you a little bit of warning and some red lines will appear and you've got to avoid them. Okay, that might seem pretty easy, right? Well, as we go through the waves, more and more bombs are dropped. And not only that, but once the bombs are dropped, those incendiary lines stick around for a while. So you're blocking off and splitting your troops up. And that tends to be my actual downfall. Mines helped me quite a lot, but they're sending in more flamer troops, which are doing a lot of damage to my mechs up close. Yet on wave 4, the bomber comes in. I avoid it initially, but then I have to try and move my commander out the way, as there was a flamer mech coming up behind me. To move him out the way, he goes through the fire. Yeah, it was a little bit embarrassing. Not the best way of doing it. So it's back to the drawing board. I head to the camp where I'd upgrade some of my mechs, put some plate armor, I can put some customization on them, and it means that I'm able to get better firepower, better armor, and better weapons. You can also upgrade your abilities as well. It is this really cool little roguelike that means you can go back, do those missions again, work out what you did wrong, and try and improve upon them. And that's what I try and do, heading back into the missions, and this time I'm much more successful. You can switch around and choose which mechs you also take onto your campaigns, so if you want a different setup for each mission, if you tend to fail quite a lot, not that I would ever do that, that is a possibility for you. All in all, I think it's a really cool game. So please click the link in the description if you haven't already to go and check it out. You'd really be supporting the channel. I'm very picky at what stuff I choose to bring in sponsored videos to this channel. So I'd love it if you guys did support the stuff that I do, if you actually think it's interesting, because I would only pick a game that I think fits the channel and is fairly interesting to my audience. So click the link in the description, and thank you once again to Grit and Valor for sponsoring today's video.